Hey YouTube, this is going to be my first ever episode on here, so I just sort of wanted to do a little bit of an intro because the actual audio that you're going to hear I upload to Spotify as well, which obviously I might need to have a little bit more of an intro to this than I do to the Spotify portion of this, because I think I've uploaded about 7 episodes to Spotify, but I decided to jump on here. I mean, I go into a little bit in the actual audio. But I just wanted to say hello YouTube. My name's Jackson. I'm a Australian basketball fan, and my passion has always been the NBA, especially sort of the media side of it and discussing the actual sport. So I thought, what's better than chucking stuff up on YouTube and trying to talk to sort of other like-minded basketball people. So if you guys want to be along for the ride with me and just sort of analyze basketball in a fairly casual as well as analytical style, subscribe and let me know what you think. All type of criticism is welcome, even if it's just basically calling me a dumb dickhead. I don't really care. I just really want to talk basketball. So hopefully I'll see you guys in the next one. G'day. Welcome back to another episode of just another NBA podcast, and this one's going to be tiny different. I feel like I say that every episode, but this one actually is going to be a little bit different because I'm going to start uploading these to YouTube, as well as continue to have them on Spotify, just because I feel like it's a little bit easier for me to interact and to sort of grow a community that I'm sort of intending to have around these type of things. And yeah, you can't really do that on Spotify. It's not as easy to say, hey, how you going type stuff. And a place that doesn't really let you comment on things or interact with people on it. So yeah, I'm going to sort of chuck these onto the YouTube channel that I'm hoping that some of you guys are listening to it too. And yeah, I'll see if potentially could grow, get new people, and just try to keep doing this because I enjoy doing this. It's good fun. It's fun to talk about basketball, especially where I'm Australian, and NBA, whilst it is fairly big, it's sort of hard to find people who genuinely want to have an in-depth conversation, just like the one I'm going to have today, to myself. And I'm hoping that the audio quality is a little bit better than episodes past because I'm using a brand new microphone. Yeah, it's nice and formal. It's sitting on the desk. I used to record these bloody things with with my phone headphones, and I feel like the quality was just crap. So I decided to upgrade, invest, because you got to invest in yourself, invest in your development. You guys hear me? Yeah, invest in yourselves. Do it. It's for the best. But anyway, I'm going to dive right into this. And the thing I want to talk about is sort of involved with what happened today. The Miami Heat beat the Boston Celtics. It was a good game to watch, honestly. I did quite enjoy it. I enjoyed the whole series. These two teams were really well matched. They were both defensive, I'd say juggernauts, for lack of a better word. But they both were very well coached. It was much like the Toronto series where it was just two great basketball minds going against each other. And to be fair, I did have the Celtics winning this. I really did. But also, to be fair, at the beginning of the season, I was not high on this Heat team. It was built off unproven talent and a lot of volatile elements. I know a lot of people were like, oh, you can't blame Jimmy for what happened in Minnesota, nothing really too much happened in Philly, but you guys know what I mean. Like, he has a reputation from what transpired in his time in Minnesota. And I was worried that was going to might stream down, especially because of the fact that this core was built off players such like Kendrick Nunn, Duncan Robinson, and Tyler Hero, a bunch of unproven rookies and young players. Boy, was I wrong. I was so wrong. Duncan Robinson has the ability after his first season to go down as one of the best shooters of all time. In his first proper season. Like, are you kidding me? Who would have expected that? And you have Kendrick Nunn, who was in Rookie of the Year conversation. Who would have expected that? The guy who came from the G League and had his rookie season this year and just exploded. I think he was breaking records in his first couple games. It was insane. And watching him play was brilliant. I mean, the bloke struggles to defend anything, but that offensive game. From your point guards nowadays, that's all you need. You just need some solid offensive talent and then have other stars in different positions and you're golden. The Tony Parker's special. But let's dig a little deeper, especially into this matchup, right? So I was thinking that this matchup was basically the battle of chemistry and culture versus raw talent, right? And I'm sure some people are probably sitting there being like, oh, what the bloody hell does that mean? What I mean is that a lot of these players that came onto this Heat roster that either may have been there for a while, like Goran Dragic and a few of the other players, like Bam's been there for a little bit. A lot of these players were picked fairly late, or late-ish. I mean, Tyler Hero was the 13th pick. You have Bam at the 14th. You then have Jay Crowder, who was the 34th. You have Jimmy Butler, who was the 30th. You have Goran Dragic, who's the 45th. Then you had Duncan Robinson, who was actually just undrafted. And then you compare that, this team that is filled with these guys that were slept on for so long. You bring it over into the Boston Celtics, and they have Jason Tatum, who was a third pick, Jaylen Brown, who was a third pick, Enes Kanter, who was a third pick, Marcus Smart, who was a sixth pick, Kemba Walker, who was a ninth pick, and then Gordon Hayward, who was a ninth pick. And I mean, you even look just from the eye test of looking at these teams, you see, like I said before in a previous podcast, that this Celtics team is star-studded. They have an amazing amount of talent. It's undeniable. I mean, Jason Tatum, the 18-time All-Star, as I've heard some people call him, he's phenomenal. I love watching him play. I do get little flashbacks of Kobe, and just his offensive game looks like he's going to have little to no weakness. Then you have Jaylen Brown, who he's a championship kind of player. I really believe that in just the way that he carries himself and the way that he plays and just the grit that he shows. I mean, you see him challenging so many offensive boards all the time. You see him getting knocked to the ground. You see him penetrating to the paint even when there's such an elite defender like Bam. Like, this team is going to be good. And I thought they were going to get over the hump this year, but this will just be one of those things that we look back on when we see Jason Tatum with a handful of rings and Jaylen Brown right there next to him with Marcus Smart and whoever else is on this team. Like, this team will win championships if they stay together, 100%. I'd bet the house on that, because just the sheer talent of this team, especially, I mean, if they keep Brad Stevens, he's a phenomenal coach. He's proven himself. But they got kicked out. I can sing their praises all I want. They got kicked out. They're not in there anymore. It's the Heat. The Heat are in the finals against LeBron. And this team, I was actually planning to make a podcast now / video, sort of going through the stock movements of individual players. And I know that obviously I had to put in someone from the Heat or some people from the Heat. And I couldn't pick an individual person. I was quite literally going to sit here and talk about for like 5-10 minutes about how great this whole team is and how they've all raised their stock, because they all have played phenomenally individually as well as a team. And you don't see that very often. Like, this team gives me a lot of Spurs dynasty vibes, where it's so built around the culture. And the Miami Heat culture has been there for almost since the team was founded almost. I mean, it sort of became more of a thing when you had Dwayne Wade there building it up with Pat Riley, and Spo really helped bring it to the forefront, especially during the LeBron era. And then after he left, it became a lot more of a grit and grind style team where they're very defensive focused, and it was fantastic. Like, I think this team has probably one of the best chemistries in the entire league. I mean, even now I'm going through the teams and I can't think of any team that chemistry-wise is this elite. And I think it's a very underrated thing. I mean, you see the Clippers. I thought that they were going to most likely be the champion. They, on paper, had an all-time talent level team. The chemistry sucked. Paul George was horrible. So they failed. This Miami Heat team, they all seem to keep each other accountable, and they're keeping on each other's backs and on each other's toes, and they're pushing each other. They're helping each other. They're there for each other, and I think it's a very underrated aspect of the game. I think it's why the Spurs won so often. I mean, Tony Parker was a good point guard, but when you really look at it, was he an elite level point guard? No. He was just a great point guard who played in a great system with a great team who had an unbeatable culture. But we're going to sort of move more into the individual players, you know. You got guys like Jimmy. And this might sound a bit weird, but I've got Jimmy in that group of players who are walking systems. It's something that I haven't heard too much about, but it's something that I definitely believe that some individual players are actually walking systems. You have guys like LeBron James, Stephen Curry, Rudy Gobert. I mean, prime Dwight Howard was one, Magic Johnson. You have these players where their style of play affects everything. And no matter where you put them, this system that sort of surrounds them follows. So, like, for example, you got Rudy Gobert. You chuck him on any team at any point in time, he is a defensive system in himself, because people will start to not want to drive to the basket because it's Rudy Gobert. The man's an absolute monster when it comes to protecting the rim, and it deters players from going. So with him there, you can then build around with perimeter-centric defensive players, and you're basically set on the defensive end, which is why this Utah Jazz team consistently has high defensive ratings. Well, technically low defensive ratings, just great defensive ratings is what I'm trying to get at. And it's the same with Steph Curry. You put Steph Curry on any team at any time, anywhere on the court, and he demands so much respect from defenders on the perimeter. He doesn't even need to shoot the ball, but you know that there are going to be at least one person, if not someone else close by, on him. And it affects the entirety of the game and entirety of how that team plays. You move it to Magic Johnson. There is no team where he is playing on it that isn't doing very well in transition. It's just not possible. It's the same with LeBron. Transition, their teams historically are dominant because that's how they play, and it pushes everyone else in the team to play like that, because when these players are playing in these systems that they bring, they excel. And I've got Jimmy Butler right there, and it's not for the reasons that some people might think, that he's just a really grit and grind and he's good defensive and he's a good leader. It's because of his ego and his personality. And I mean, we all know about the Minnesota and all that stuff, but I think that his mentality sort of is similar to the mentality of Kobe, except it's more team-centric. Kobe's Mamba mentality was him being him, and that was godly. Whereas Jimmy's is him being him, and it lifts everyone around him up. Now, I'm not going to say which one is better or which one is worse. Like, Kobe's won him 5 rings. Jimmy Butler has been probably one of the best playoff stories that we've had in quite a while. But it brings a lot to it, and it's very unlike the other teams. The other players that I previously stated about being walking systems. Jimmy's is very dependent on who are around him, because it didn't work in Minnesota. It kind of worked in Philly, but it's flourishing in Miami because it matches the culture, it matches the coaching style, it matches the personality of the players around him, which is why this team has excelled so much. And then you can move it to other players, and you've got guys like Bam, an all-star, all-defensive talent center. I think the most versatile center in the league. The man can quite literally do anything outside of maybe being a primary ball handler. I mean, he has a developing offensive game. I mean, he's still elite around the basket, but he's developing to have a mid-range, and who knows, maybe could develop into having a somewhat serviceable three-point shot. You then move it to his defense, which is elite. One of the better defensive centers in the game. I mean, he was all defensive. He had that historic and jaw-dropping block on Jason Tatum. I mean, I honestly knocked over my chair when I was watching that. And then he has the ability to make plays. And that's probably one of the bigger things that sets a lot of all-time centers apart, is their ability for an offense to not only run into them, like guys like Shaq and Patrick Ewing and David Robinson, where the offense didn't really run through them; it ran to them, and then they scored, they did something. Whereas these players like Jokic, Bill Walton, Sabonis, like old Sabonis, Artemis Sabonis, and now Bam, the offense can run through them. Whereas it's not getting the ball to Bam and he scores; it's getting the ball to Bam and he sets up the right play, which is it's something that's not so seen so often. So these teams don't really game plan for it, but now you have to, especially when you're going up against the Heat and the Nuggets. But especially right now with the Heat, the ability for him to pass out of the paint and from the elbow and even on the perimeter, it just makes him a matchup nightmare for a lot of these big guys who just aren't used to guarding playmaking bigs. And you move on to Tyler Hero. I mean, I thought that Tyler Hero was going to be good. I thought that he should have been picked higher than where he was in the draft, but I did not expect him to have such an impact so early. I expected him to have a bit of growing pains coming into the league, especially because I thought that he might have a bit of I wouldn't say target on his back, but I feel like a lot of players would attack him because I didn't expect him to be a good defensive player. He's shown himself to be a serviceable defensive player. I mean, he's not Bam or Jimmy, but he can hold his own and he shows the effort, which to me I think is one of the most important factors is players showing the effort. And then, I mean, you can move on to guys like Duncan Robinson who have shown that they are elite shooters, and spreading the floor for this style of team is crucial. That's why Hero works so well. It's why Robinson works so well. It's why, I mean, Jay Crowder is the definition of a streaky shooter, but when he's shooting, he does very well on this team, as well as with his very strong defensive mindset. And then you have guys like Myers Leonard and Kelly Olynyk who arguably won't get too much playing time, but they're options you can slot in who can still spread the floor for guys like Jimmy who lives at the foul line, and for guys like Bam who, whilst at the moment he doesn't have too much of outside shooting, he's still able to play around the rim and get a fair few like offensive boards and be able to play a lot more sort of aggressive and not in a locked up paint, which some teams still have the trouble with. They're able to just throw these other players who can stretch the floor while still giving them size. And then outside of all that, you have these leaders. And I think Udonis Haslem is, whilst he might not have these amazing stats that surprise and shock people, and we talk about it, his veteran leadership is one of the most crucial parts of this team. Same with Andre Iguodala, who is still able to get onto the court, still able to sort of have some form of production, mainly on the defensive end, as well as being an option that the offense can somewhat flow through, because he's a smart, offensive, talented player, and he knows where to go. I mean, his championship pedigree. I mean, this was his sixth straight finals appearance. Like the man he's a fantastic player, and I think that his impact on teams is very understated. But yeah, this Heat team, man, you didn't bloody expect it. And for anyone who tells you that they did expect it, they're bloody lying. There's no way that anyone thought that this team was going to A, beat the Bucks, B, also beat the Celtics quite handedly, and C, just do it so nonchalantly. They basically walked through half of it. I mean, they didn't even seem phased against Giannis. They knew exactly what they were going to do, and they did it, and it worked. And they're in the finals. I mean, I'd love to see what the bloody betting odds for them to even get past the Eastern Conference. Like, they're insane. And I'm very much looking forward to this series against the Lakers. I do have the Lakers winning it because I think that whilst they have a good system at shutting down bigs like Giannis and potentially Anthony Davis, I don't even know if it's humanly possible to stop LeBron when it's the finals. He has a completely different set of gears that he turns on. But I think it should be very interesting to see, and being able to witness how Spo goes about combating someone that he's actually coached himself. I think we're in for a very good series. I think that we're in for probably a more interesting series than a lot of people are saying, because I've seen people saying that the Lakers are going to sweep them and that like the Miami they're playing against weaker talent, which is something that really pisses me off because the teams they've played have been quality outside of the Sabonis-less Pacers. But I'm excited. I'm keen. And I hope that everyone else is very keen to watch it, because I think that this has the ability to be one of the more interesting finals, especially if Miami is able to put up a good fight. I think it could go down as one of the best. But anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. For this is all for the YouTube people, but if you like what you're hearing, I'm going to plan to hopefully get at least 1 or 2 episodes out a week. And once we get out of the actual basketball series season and like finish the final series, I'll start going into sort of top tens and analyzing trades and drafts and all that type of stuff. So yeah, subscribe if you want to keep listening. Apparently leaving a like is important. So leave one of them. I mean, I don't really mind. I'm doing this more for myself, but I'd love to get more people along for the ride. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good one, boys.